everyone, welcome back. My name is Morgan. This is my channel Pisces Paperbacks, and today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. I'm using a different reading spreadsheet than I have the past few years, and I really like how this monthly stats sheet is set up better than the ones that I was using previously. So I'm going to be starting my monthly wrap-ups with a little bit of a statistics section. So in January, I read 17 books for a total of 5,709 pages. 11 of them were audiobooks, 4 of them were ebooks, and 2 were hardcovers. So that's pretty cool. My average rating was 3.63. My most read genre was romance, followed by fantasy, which is pretty predictable. And then I actually am not going to show you the graph of my ratings because it includes the ratings for the HarperCollins books that I can't talk about. So once the strike ends, I will be including the circle graph of my ratings as well. Before we begin, I guess I should quickly talk about the HarperCollins strike. The HarperCollins union has been on strike since November, trying to get fair wages, like a livable starting wage for employees, as well as diversity in hiring, executives, and acquisition of books. Diversity basically on every level of the publishing process. And as of last week, on the 56th day of striking, HarperCollins finally agreed to come to the negotiating table to try and find a fair contract for its employees. There has been other developments. I don't think that I'm the most educated person to really be giving people the news on that, but I'm just very disgusted by the behavior of the executives of HarperCollins. Like, they're not a company that's going broke, you know? It wouldn't cost them profit to fairly pay their workers, and it's just very frustrating. Anyway, let's talk about some books. So, the first book that I finished in 2023 was What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a reimagining, retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, which I've never read, but I still really, really enjoyed this. It is a horror about a former soldier named Easton, and they receive this ominous letter from a girl that they were friends with, childhood friends with, and the girl's like, my brother thinks I'm gonna die, but I'm totally fine. And Easton's like, I should go to their house and see what's going on. When Easton gets there, things are not right. The friends seem to be on the brink of death. Like, they are emaciated and very weak and seem to be having trouble with memory things, and it's just the animals in the area don't act the way that animals should. It's just very creepy, and you just kind of slowly it is revealed what is going on at this house, and it was so creepy. I really, really loved it. I ended up giving it about 4 stars. I think this was a really good start to the year. As we've all heard, had a struggle year last year in terms of like really enjoying things that I was reading. Nothing that was really super duper memorable, but this was like a very low pressure way to start the year. I had already started it in December and I just finished it, and it was lovely. The second book I finished this month, and also the first book I started in 2023, is The Erotomaniac, The Secret Life of Henry Spencer Ashby by Ian Gibson. I made a vlog about this one, so I'm not going to talk about it too long, but this is basically a nonfiction biography of this Victorian gentleman who had a secret life where he was basically he collected erotic literature, and he wrote these very in-depth bibliographies organizing hundreds and hundreds of volumes of erotica. And this is just an examination of his life. It's a true biography. I found this much more interesting than I thought it was going to be interesting, but much more interesting to read, enjoyable to read than I expected. The author was able to insert his own humor into it that made it a little bit more lively, a little less dry, and I tabbed it, so I must have liked something about it. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I think in the vlog that I made about this, that I'll link up above, I said I was going to give it like a 4, but upon reflection and looking at like the month as a whole in terms of where I enjoyed things, this is more of a 3.5. Then I listened to The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. This is the 3rd book in the Thursday Murder Club series, and it was a delight. First 5-star of the year. First 5-star book of the year. Absolutely adored this. I loved the Thursday Murder Club so much, and I did enjoy the second book called The Man Who Died Twice, but I didn't love it as much. I just had some issues with people not communicating as well as I think they could have, and I absolutely adored The Bullet of the Mist. I thought it was a return to perfect form. The Thursday Murder Club series is about 4 people living in this sleepy British retirement community, and every week they meet up to discuss cold cases, unsolved murders, and they are delighted when someone in connection to their retirement community is murdered, and they kind of wheedle their way into the investigation. And it is so much fun. It is so cozy. It's so cheerful. It's so charming. I absolutely love this series. I cannot say enough good things about it. Then on a unfortunately slightly less successful note, I read The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan. This is a YA sci-fi novel that came out a few years ago, and I just thought it had the most beautiful cover I'd ever seen. So I was really excited to finally get to listen to it, and I just ended up not loving it. It is about 2 sisters. I do not remember their names, and this takes place in the future when, because of climate change and humanity living, natural earth environment has kind of become poisoned. Like, the air isn't great, the oceans are kind of poisoned, and so most of humanity lives in these eco-cities where a lot of life is lived in virtual reality. The younger sister is very scientific, very practical, and she kind of sees this as a necessity for humanity's survival. She understands it, but her older sister has much more perspective of, you need to embrace your life. Like, she'll go weeks at a time doing like a tech detox and like turn off her implant so people can't see where she is. And basically the older sister has gone missing, presumed dead, lost at sea, and the younger sister is trying to figure out what happened. And then at the same time you see the older sister on an island trying to remember her past life. She's experiencing memory loss and trying to find her younger sister. And through these 2 perspectives, you kind of get the full picture of what happened. But I just found this dull. I was just very bored. I feel like there wasn't enough life in the story, and I don't really have too much to say about this, unfortunately. It's just like, I read it, I gave it 2 stars, more like 2.25. I appreciate that it had a message it was trying to communicate, and it did do that. I also, my spreadsheet has quarter stars. Last year and the years before, it's only been full and half stars, but now I have full, half, and quarter stars, so I kind of went a little crazy with it, but that's fine. After that, I listened to the audiobook of Always by Lynsay Sands. This is a HarperCollins novel. It's under the Avon imprint, so I can't talk about this. Following that, I listened to The Brat by Lynsay Sands. This is a HarperCollins title under the Avon imprint, and I cannot talk about it. After that, I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I made a vlog about this, so I will link that up above, and I won't talk about this too long. This is an adult fantasy novel following Alex Stern, a girl who can see ghosts, and she comes from a very rough life in California, and she gets the chance to kind of start over after a huge tragedy when she's offered a spot at Yale, but also a spot at Lethe House, which is basically an organization that oversees the 8 ancient magical secret societies at Yale to make sure that they aren't abusing their power. And it kind of gets out of control. There's a murder, and Alex has to investigate while also keeping her secrets to herself and protecting herself. I love this book. This is a 4.5, and I am so happy that I reread it. It was a really good experience. I usually go chronologically, but since these books were in a vlog together, I'll just talk about this one now. Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, the sequel to Ninth House, came out earlier this month on January 10th. After 4 years, very exciting. I really loved this book. I thought that the reading experience was more compulsively readable. Like, I felt like I had to keep going. I had to know what was going to happen next rather than, more than Ninth House. But I think I liked the story of Ninth House a smidge better. So this is like a 4.5. This is like a 4.25. I'm not going to give you a synopsis. Story-wise, it picks up pretty much right after Ninth House ends, so I feel like it would be spoiling stuff. But I really loved this. I loved the character dynamics in this. I loved the side characters from the Ninth House that we get to know a lot more in this. I feel like the mystery was really interesting, and I just loved it. Then I listened to Between a Highlander and a Hard Place by Mary Wine. This was not very good. This is a historical Scottish romance about a girl who believed that a nobleman, a gentleman, was courting her, and when he invites her to dinner one night, she's like, well, we're gonna get engaged, so it's probably fine that I go to his house by myself. And she gets there and he's like, I wouldn't marry you. You're gonna be my mistress. And now that you're at my house, everybody's gonna think I've ruined you. And if you try to tell people that I'm trying to make you my mistress, no one's gonna believe you because your uncle isn't a gentleman, he's a commoner. And so she's like, fuck you, I'm never gonna be your mistress. And when she's running away, she accidentally burns his house down. So she's like on the run, and her uncle's like, I'm gonna get you out of here, I'm gonna send you up north to Scotland with my friend, it'll be fine. And so while she's in Scotland, she encounters this guy, you know, he's a clan leader, a laird. I don't remember any of their names. And he sees her and is immediately just like, I love her. I have to protect her. And it's a big deal that he's like finally interested in someone because he had a wife who passed away in childbirth like 3 years ago. This book was just boring. It was just bad. Like, it was very serious, but also extremely cheesy. And it was just like not very good, and I feel like she was supposed to be so spunky, but she like wasn't. I really didn't enjoy this. I gave it 2 stars. Then I listened to Fire and Ice by Julie Garwood. This is bad. This is just not very good. I have read a lot of Julie Garwood books, and I found the ones that are bad are her contemporary romantic suspense, and that absolutely stays true here. If you're gonna read Julie Garwood, just go with her historical Scottish romances, like The Bride, The Wedding, The Prize, The Gift, Ransom, like, just go with those. Fire and Ice is about Sophie Rose. She is a journalist at a local paper near Chicago, and she's just trying to live her life, do her job, be a good journalist, and her dad is always in the news because he's kind of like a notorious criminal in Chicago. He's like a people's Robin Hood, but corporations hate him kind of vibe. And she's just trying to live her life. But the plot kind of kicks off when she interviews this guy about running a lot of 5Ks, and he just goes missing. And she's like, that's weird. And then his body turns up in Alaska, and the only reason they were able to identify him is because her business card was like in his sock. And she's like, that's even weirder. So she decides to start investigating. And then the romantic part of the romantic suspense comes in when Jack McAllister, a local FBI agent, is like helping her investigate. He is very cocky and not in like a fun way. I can get on board with an alpha asshole kind of hero, but it's just so condescending that it just makes me mad. The worst part about this book is that there's just no chemistry between the characters, and really, what more can you say about a romance? I gave this like 2.25 stars. Next, I listened to Once Upon a Marquess by Courtney Milan. This was a strange reading experience. Let me give you the synopsis first, and then I'll tell you like my quibbles. So this book is about Judith. She's the oldest sister in the Worth family, and she has had to work very hard to take care of her younger siblings after her father and brother were found to be like traitors to England. They were sabotaging war efforts or something, I don't know. Her father committed suicide, and her brother was sentenced to like a prison ship, punishment ship, but then it was lost at sea. And so now it is like 8 years later, and she has worked very hard to take care of her family, but when a business problem arises, and she's like, well, they're not going to respect me, they need a man there, she decides the only person who will help her is the guy that owes her for ruining her life, and that's Christian Trent, the Marquess of whatever, and her older brother's best friend. He is the man who discovered the proof of her brother's treason. She's like, you fucking owe me, and you should help me also because they used to kind of be engaged. Back before the whole treason thing happened, they had a romance. This was an odd book because it was like The Yearning. I really, really loved the emotions and the yearning and how much he loved her, how every time she was in the room, he was like, she's so smart, she's so funny, she's so clever, and she's so interesting, and there's never going to be another woman for me. And I'm like, okay, I could get behind that in a romance. That's fun. That's why I gave it as high of a rating as I did. But the tone was very strange because Christian, throughout the book, everybody's like, you have the weirdest sense of humor. And he's kind of like a class clown kind of vibe. Like, he's always joking. He's always, maybe it's just because I didn't think the jokes were funny. But he's always joking, making these like the most ridiculous jokes. But he's also supposed to be like extremely earnest. It was just a very strange experience. I did not super enjoy that. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars. I've given Courtney Milan's books, I've read one before and I gave it a 4 stars. I definitely didn't like this one as much as that one, but it wasn't like terrible, and I think other people would like it. I just didn't. Maybe it's like a 3. Next, I read Nimona by ND Stevenson. This graphic novel is a HarperCollins title under the Harper Teen, Harper Alley imprint, so can't talk about it. And then I read Over My Dead Body by Sweeney Boo. This is a HarperCollins title under the Harper Alley, Harper Teen imprint, and I can't talk about it. Next, I read The Witchery by S Isabelle. I talked about this a lot in my weekly reading vlog that I posted last week, so I will link that up above. But this is a YA fantasy about a group of girls at a magic school in Florida who are determined to break the curse over this town. Basically, 100 years ago, the human, mundane residents of this town in Florida hunted and killed these 3 witch sisters, and in revenge they cursed the town so that every year these magical wolves come out of the swamp and kill the humans. And so there's this big tradition now of humans gifting the witches at this school gifts and charms or offerings so that the witches will set these charms to protect the humans, which they would have done anyway, but it's like a nice little like culture exchange kind of thing. And so these 3 girls, Irish, Jayla, and Talia, are like the queen bees of the school, and they're like, we're gonna break this curse, but they need the help of Logan, who has like magic blood. And so they 4 have POV chapters, as well as 2 boys from the human school also in the town. I talked a lot about it, how I didn't love things about this book. I thought the narration on the audiobook was fine, except that one of the boys has a British accent, and for some reason she goes like up an octave, real squeaky for him. It was awful. It was very unpleasant. Logan seems like she's going to be the main character when you read the synopsis, but she ends up having like the least POV chapters, like the fewest. And they do like nothing for the plot. Everybody has to have a convenient love interest except for the only lesbian who has like a scorned ex-girlfriend. And it was just like there was just so much happening. Everybody gets a subplot. It's just like non-stop. It just felt very clunky. And then I just also had like issues with the world building as well. It's this town, right? And it says that there's like about 1,000 human residents of this town, like non-magic residents. But then the school has like 700 something students. And I'm just like, how does this local economy work when almost half your population and the people who, you know, come to your cafes and your shops are students at a school? Like, they're in high school. And then like geography wise, I love a magic school. I love a magic school. But geography wise, it makes no sense because most of the book doesn't happen at the magic school. It happens like at various locations in the town, but they very, very rarely mention how the girls are getting from place to place. I had assumed that everything was in walking distance, and then towards the end of the book, they mention that they have to drive somewhere. It's like in a hurry. So they're, you know, in the dorms. Somebody comes in and is like, it's an emergency. We need you to get somewhere. And then the next paragraph is like 10 minutes later, they were on the road. And I was like, 10 minutes? It took you 10 minutes to get from the dorm to your car? So not everything. It was just like very strange. I struggled. I had read this in the hopes that I was going to read the sequel, which comes out later this year, and I think also has a beautiful cover. This has a beautiful cover. I thought that one would also have a beautiful cover, but I'm not going to continue in this series. Next, I listened to How We Fight for Our Lives by Saeed Jones. 5 stars. I absolutely loved this. This is a nonfiction memoir about the author as he's kind of navigating life as a young black gay man. The first section is about his childhood, kind of starts when he's 12 and like understanding what being gay is and how that's going to affect his life. And then it moves into his teen and college years, talking about his relationship with like sex and intimacy and how it was not a very healthy relationship. And then the second or the last part of the book is about his relationship with his mother and his emotional process when she very unexpectedly passes away. And I thought this was so, so beautifully written. He's very clearly a poet. He is a poet, but you can tell that it's so gorgeously written. I can't wait to read this again someday and highlight and underline. I'm so happy that I own a copy. My mom got this for me, I think, a few years ago as a gift, and I just loved it. If I was going to rate this objectively without taking my own personal enjoyment into account, I would say that some of the storylines or themes feel abruptly ended. They don't feel like they have a conclusion or that he's processed those emotions enough to really have written like a memoir about them. But it's not real, like it is real life. It's not fiction. Not everything gets like tied up with a bow, so it feels just like very real to me. I just loved this. Next, I listened to The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. Unfortunately, this is a HarperCollins title, which I didn't know until I was like halfway through it. Unfortunately, I didn't pay attention when I was putting it on hold from the library, and it just sucks. I really want to talk about this one. I have a lot to say, but I can't. So, the last book I read in January is actually also a HarperCollins title, but I think I'm allowed to talk about it because I've actually talked about it already on this channel several times, and that's because I reread The Sum of All Kisses. It's the 6th time that I've read this book. I love this. It's one of my favorite romances ever, and I've talked about it so much. I'm gonna link my favorite books of the year video from 2022, and you can hear me talk about it there, but I'll give you like the shortest little synopsis. Is one of my favorite romances, 5 stars for me, but objectively there's really nothing that's special about it. It's like, I think it's special in that the characters are so, they belong together, and I think the writing is so funny and so witty and so interesting, but it has one of the most ridiculous, awful, terrible, insufferable conflicts at the end, which is, you know, the worst thing a book can have is a bad plot, but I look past that out of love. This is about Sarah and Hugh as they fall in love over the course of 2 weeks, as they're both trapped going to these 2 weddings. Basically, 2 of Sarah's cousins are getting married like 2 weeks apart, and so the whole family and everybody at the first wedding is then traveling over to the second house for the second wedding, and it's become like a 2-week extravaganza of a vacation for everybody. And Sarah is tasked with making sure Hugh feels comfortable at both of these weddings, because Hugh is the reason that one of her cousins had to flee the country several years before and like stay out of the country on the run for like 3 years. It's okay, he's back now. He's one of the people getting married, but, and like he and Hugh have like put that behind them. It's in the past, all is forgiven, but Hugh is still very self-conscious of the fact that he's like, I ruined this guy's life for like several years by accident. And so Sarah is tasked with making him comfortable and make sure he feels welcome, which is a bit difficult because they hate each other. She blames him for ruining her first season in society because of the scandal. She had to like push back her debut, and she missed the season when a lot of guys ended up getting engaged that year, and she is still unmarried, and she's like, I just want to get married, fall in love. So she hates Hugh for a lot of reasons, and Hugh hates her for being so rude and dramatic, but they get to know each other and they fall in love a little bit. I have been filming for so goddamn long, you don't even know. But that is all 17 books I read in January. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought. I would love to hear it. And I also want to know what you read this month. Anything good? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!